Hello and welcome to Kindred Spirits Book Club, the podcast where two, and sometimes, like today, three grown-ass ladies geek out about Anne of Green Gables. I'm Kelly Gerner, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ragon Duffy.
Hi, everyone.
And we are absolutely delighted to have with us today Kat Sandler, the playwright who has written a new adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, which is premiering at the Stratford Festival in Stratford, Ontario, in Canada this spring.
Hi, Kat. So happy to be here. I can't believe it.
We are so happy to have you, Kat. This is really exciting stuff. Listeners, we are going to be geeking out hard with Kat today, so let's get a little bit of business out of the way so we can just jump right into our conversation with Kat about her play and all the cool things that she has been working on over there for the Stratford Festival. So, Kindred Spirits, are you following us on Instagram yet? If not, we invite you to do so. We have so much fun sharing pictures and videos about these books and everything else that's striking our fancy. So we are kindredspirits.bookclub there. We love hearing from you. So whether you email us at kindredspirits.bookclub@gmail.com or whether you DM us on Instagram, we always appreciate hearing your thoughts and opinions about the pod. So feel free to give us feedback, share your thoughts, give us ideas for a new episode. And Kindred Spirits, we have a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Spotify and Pocket Casts also now have the ability to rate podcasts and leave comments. So if you listen there, rate us 5 stars as well. Basically, wherever you listen, if you can rate and review us, please do, because that really helps us be more likely to be promoted and it lets other kindred spirits find us.
So now the fun part. Let's introduce all of you kindred spirits to Kat. Kat Sandler is an award-winning playwright, director, screenwriter, and was the founding artistic director of Theatre Brouhaha in Toronto. Fantastic name, by the way. Her plays have been performed across Canada and internationally. As a writer-director, she has staged 19 of her original plays in the last decade, including most recently the world premiere of Wild Woman at Soul Pepper Theatre. She is also a screenwriter and has written for Kim's Convenience, Good Question Media, Limetown Podcast, and Film Coop, and is adapting her hit play Yaga for television for Bell Media Crave. Welcome to the podcast, Kat.
This is already the best.
We are so delighted to have you, Kat. And okay, also, I don't know how we didn't talk about this before. I love Kim's Convenience. How fun is it that you worked on that?
The best. It was created by another Toronto playwright, Instroy, who was just incredible. So that whole thing is very homegrown Toronto, Canada, like the theater industry and the TV industry there.
Amazing.
So Kat found us and informed us about her Anne of Green Gables play. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about that, Kat?
So I was invited to do an adaptation of Anne of Green Gables in December of 2024, with the possibility of it maybe getting to happen in this season. And I set about trying to figure out how to adapt something that has been adapted so many times into so many beloved versions. My experience with it was mostly from the miniseries as a kid. And when I kind of set myself to the task of figuring out how to do this for the family show at Stratford, so it's the kind of kids show, it was like, what are the elements of this story that we can really, really pull out to make it something that's exciting for kids and nostalgic for us, the lovers of the story already. So the production really, really focuses on imagination and kind of brings the readers and the fans of Anne of Green Gables on stage as this kind of Greek chorus of people who love the story already and some who don't know it yet already. And they kind of narrate us through the story, and then we end with kind of a little bit of a modern twist, because we've seen this story so much and in so many different theatrical ways that it felt like we might as well show that it's timeless by giving it a tiny little update, just as a kicker.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing to watch. So tell us a little bit about the Stratford Festival.
So the Stratford Festival is a theater festival that has been going on for years and years and years in Ontario, Canada. It generally focuses mostly on Shakespeare, but in the last big chunk of years, they've gotten a lot more into musicals and new works as well. It's kind of the Broadway of Canada. I would say. So it's a repertory festival, which means that like my actors in Anne of Green Gables are being shared with other shows. So these plays are performed in rep. I think there's 12 shows this season with the kind of the big musical of Annie and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and then the big Shakespeare's of As You Like It and Macbeth and Winter's Tale. I've been coming here since I was a little kid, and it's just so exciting to get to be here in a professional capacity now, and especially to be working on Anne here.
That sounds amazing. Kelly, you have been to the Stratford Festival before, right?
I've been to the Stratford Festival a bunch of times. I had the opportunity to travel to Canada a lot as a kid because my brothers played travel hockey. That part of the story is less interesting, but what is interesting is because they always had camps in Canada during the summer. I think my parents felt bad and are like, oh my God, we need to find something for Kelly to do. So they found out about the Stratford Festival in Toronto. And since we were in Canada anyway in the summers, they were like, great, send Kelly there. Just let her see all the plays. She'll be happy. So for a period, I think all through middle school and high school, I spent about a week just at the festival going to plays every summer while my brothers did hockey camp.
Do you remember anything that you saw?
Oh my God, I saw so much. I remember you talking just now about the actors acting in repertory was what really made me remember. I remember seeing a production of West Side Story. I absolutely melted. I thought the girl who played Maria was like the greatest thing ever. And because the actors were in repertory, I was like made it my mission to see everything else she was in that season or whatever. But because she was in such a big role for that, the other roles she had were essentially one-line walk-ons. And I was so like just mystified by how that works. I'm like, but she's a star. What do you mean she just has one line in this other play? But that's the beauty of repertory theater, right? You get to like be the star in one show where you get to be the person who walks on and says one line in another show. It's kind of fun.
Totally. It's wild. The actors are incredible here at the festival, but it's also like I've never had resources like this. Like just the wig department alone. We were in rehearsal and I saw Anne come out with her red braids and I cried. It's so iconic to see those braids and to know that like just the sheer amount of hours that the people in wigs have been putting into making 4 different wigs that she wears over the course of the show. They're absolutely incredible. The craftsmanship is completely unparalleled. And like our house, like our Green Gables house is so stunning. My set designer had never read the book. So when she creates Avonlea, she's creating it from her imagination of what she imagines that place to look and feel like, and what that house and that sense of belonging feels like as a set for a theater show rather than a musical.
It's got to be so amazing to just have that wealth of creative power behind you as you embark on this project, right? Because I think for a lot of people, Anne of Green Gables is so intuitively well known. But then if you do have people who have this incredible creative background and experience coming at it with sort of a fresh perspective, I mean, I can only imagine how exciting and interesting and new it's going to feel when you see it all come together.
That's the thing I think that I've been saying, rather than saying that I'm adapting, I've been saying that I'm kind of collaborating with Ella Montgomery's text, because the story, it's all there, it's so there, it's so beautiful, it's so funny, it's held up so well. Like 99% of it is still totally playable. But as you say, like the not my audience won't all know the story. Her generation of theater goers won't necessarily have read it. Like it's not taught in schools in the same way that it was. And after Anne with an E, there's kind of been a gap in the large scale adaptations of this outside of the musical. So people know the musical, kids know the musical if their parents bring them to the musical, because we know the musical. It's creating a story that is both like incredibly familiar and nostalgic to millions of people, and then that another huge subset of people just have never heard of. Like my sister's gonna kill me. I say this every time. When I said I was working on this, she was like, "Oh yeah, it's the girl in Newfoundland who grows potatoes," and it's like it's close, But if she
So
has no
funny.
history with the story, then it might as well be that. So our version will be many people's introduction to this story. And it means you really want to get it right, but you don't need to do it exactly the way it's always been done.
Yeah. Well, so prior to working on the play, what was your relationship and understanding of Anne? When you started this project, what did Anne mean to you?
So I met Anne through a VHS of the Kevin Sullivan 1985 miniseries.
As many of our generation do.
It was in heavy rotation for me on sick days with The Princess Bride and The Labyrinth. So
Yes.
kind of my imagination station of sick days as a kid, and I wore that tape to dust, finding my favorite parts like Cordial and really Gilbert anything, and just
Yep.
like,
You fast forward to all the Gilbert scenes.
yeah, and like I would never skip Matthew's death. I would still heave sob, and and the music for that was so visceral to me. Like I can still conjure most of those images if I hear that music. So that was my first kind of real introduction to it. And I think I saw the musical at some point, and I watched a little bit of Anne with an E, but the that Kevin Sullivan one was the first big one for me. And then when I got this gig and I went back and actually read the first three books, I don't want to say I was so shocked, but I was that it was actually laugh out loud funny. And I was still heave sobbing and like in all the same places that I did in that series. And it's so interesting to see how different people, different adaptations pull out of the story. What are the kind of constants, and what are the things that people shift a little bit based on where you are in time and who your audience is and whether or not there are songs.
Right? So when you were doing that, when you went back and you read it and pulling in all of your memories of these other experiences, how did you decide what to keep in and what to change? Like that's a big thing when you're adapting this book that takes place over 6 years of Anne's life
Yep.
and a mini series that's how many hours is a mini series? Like
It's like 4 hours long.
4 hours long, but you're going to do it in a play that, normal people are going to watch.
I did a lot of research, which for me is being like, who's an Anne fan? What does this story mean to you? Like, I would never have thought about the brooch if so many Anne fans hadn't been like, you got to put the affair of the brooch in. That has to be in. Because just reading it, you're like, okay, it's kind of the same thing as the apology to Mrs. Lynde, but for some people, it's tantamount. It's very important. Like ice cream is really important in the musical. There's a whole beautiful song about it, but in the book it's
Mhm.
really not that important for our purposes. I could leave ice cream out, but it really was listening to your podcast for sure, and hearing what you folks talked about a lot, and then just going back and digesting as many adaptations as I could and seeing what they picked. Like the constants are Gilbert, Josie, like which of the characters really stick in your mind, because we have a cast of 10 and they're playing everybody.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to have Josephine Barry. I wanted to have Mrs. Allen, but you just don't have space in a show that's 2 hours
Right.
to have everything. And you have to kind of cut corners, and you also have to find ways to keep the stakes up. In the book, it's really like Anne goes kind of from really funny little scrape to scrape. And then the back half of the book is almost all educational, which is less exciting on stage. So what we kind of did was, I say we because I collaborate heavily on these scripts with everybody. I have a lot of dramaturgs, I have a lot of producers who I listen to, and then when we get in rehearsal, I'm collaborating with the actors and the designers for something that feels really organic, that everyone has a little bit of agency over. But I think once she's accepted and staying at Green Gables, a lot of the stakes go to the book. So how do you keep that as a threat without it being really scary and Dickensian and like making Marilla a monster, which nobody wants? And how do you show that passage of time? So where we've kind of settled is we do a big chunk of the first year that she's at Green Gables, and then we jump to her final year in Avonlea High, which is what we've said. So, and whether or not she's going to get into school, and just do a big time jump, basically, so that we can show those two different versions of Anne. Because people really think of Anne as an 11-year-old kid, but actually,
Right.
so much of that book, she's a young woman. She's really coming into her own and making decisions about the rest of her life. And that's something that's so important for us to talk about with kids and for kids, is like how important it is to tell your story and to make choices that help you and that you can live with.
Kat, you had said that this was a highly collaborative effort and that you talked to a lot of fans. You collaborated with the actors and dramaturgs and just other people who are invested in the project. I also am wondering, did you consult with any of the Anne like academic community or the scholarly community on this? And tell me about some of that. I would be really curious to know what you learned from those folks. Reagan and I have learned so much from them in the past year, and I'm interested to see how they impacted the show as well.
Totally. Talking to Laura Robinson, who I know you both know as well, and she's been on the pod, was absolutely revelatory. She's just so smart and so knowledgeable, but also I find that The academics.
The academics. Stop it, Kat. I love you so much for coining that term.
But what I find is that people like Laura, who you expect them to be real sticklers for like how something must be or how the story must be. But actually, what I found and what I'm finding is that real Anne fans kind of come to it with the spirit of Anne. They're able to look at things you're doing and things you want to do with this incredible level of imagination. That was the surprise for me. I really expected the academic community to be a lot more like, it has to be like this, and Miss Josephine Barry has to be in it, and they have to go to Carmody. And Laura really embraced the spirit of what I'm trying to do with this adaptation, and was really, really supportive in helping me kind of develop it. And continues to be.
As you know, we've had a lovely chat with her. And one of the things we loved talking to her about was she was teaching a class on the graphic novel adaptations, which I think is fascinating. Before Kelly and I were doing the podcast, I am somebody who has always been kind of a stickler a little bit for adaptations. Like, I'm well known for not really embracing fan fiction because I'm all like, if it's not in the book, it didn't count. It didn't happen. But one of the things by doing all of these deep dives, reading the graphic novels, is seeing how many different ways the essential nature of Anne can be translated to so many different people, and how many different ways that brings new people to Anne's story. Often, not all the time, but once people find an entry point, whether it's the miniseries or it's a graphic novel or it's this play or it's the musical, if you get hooked by it, then you approach the book and you want everything possible from Anne. You want to embrace that, and how many different ways there are to do that.
Your podcast actually introduced me to the graphic novels. I didn't know about Anne of West Philly, and I was so excited by those, because we have such a strong visual in our mind of this time period. It does take a little bit of a leap of faith to say, okay, what would this look like today? Because it's all very well and good to say it's a timeless story, but really the issues and the themes are just as relevant now as they have ever been. And sometimes it's nice to see those in a slightly shifted perspective, to let those ideas really sink in. I mean, with the exception of getting the wrong orphan to work on your farm, pretty much everything can exist now. Like,
right.
We're still fighting real hard for teachers to be appreciated. We're still killing ourselves for women's rights over here. And now, especially lately, more than ever, like the Canadianness of this story is so important. It's something that's really exciting to be telling this Canadian of a story at this moment in history right now.
Well,
Yeah.
Kat, tell us some more about that. I think, Ragon and I are both based in the US, and so we'd love to understand that perspective a little bit more.
Yeah, it's that Canadians we're very humble.
Yeah.
We don't take up a lot of space with our art, with our opinions, with our military. But this is something that has endured and really does shine a spotlight on Canada. Like, it's one of the most successful texts to ever come out. It's been translated into 36 languages. It really is a worldwide phenomenon. And we've talked a little bit about how big a fan the Japanese culture is of this story. And it's something that, like, when we talk about even theatrically, like, I'm not saying this is like Shakespeare, but it's not like Shakespeare, because
Right.
it is truly so epic. Whole story, the whole Lucy Maud Montgomery universe that spans decades and generations and different families and spin-offs, and and this is just the books, is so all-encompassing. And there's something so special about that. Like, that you've been doing this podcast for, you said 2.5 years?
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
On this one universe,
right,
of this tiny fictional but not really fictional place in Canada that is specifically Canadian and just stuffed full of Canadian ideals, like kindness and compassion and sharing and justice and all these things that I think are even more important right now than they ever have been. And it's
Truly
really get to do this story, this Canadian story, in Canada, and give it kind of the oomph that it hopefully deserves.
Yeah, and to let this Canadian story take up space as it should, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that's interesting going back and rereading these books with this kind of detail is this lovely undercurrent of pride in Canada throughout that not just Anne, but the folks around her, and it shows up in other books, and how absolutely delighted she is to be Canadian. It's something where Americans really need to remember that Canada is not an extension of the US. And
Right.
there's something very special about being able to showcase that. And it is remarkable in that way.
And she does really remind it, like from the first buggy ride, I'm quoting, just launching into quotes. Like I've always heard Prince Edward Island was the most beautiful place in the world, and I never imagined I could ever live here. And now I am, and it's true and it's real. And when you go, and you've both been to PEI, like
Yep.
oh, and it is exactly that. Like
Hmm.
this book is responsible for over, billions of dollars of tourism over the years, like floating through PEI. Because you
Yeah.
go and it is that beautiful.
And justifiably, right? Lucy Maud Montgomery did not oversell Prince Edward Island at all. Like she nailed it.
And isn't that extraordinary? As intense as her descriptions of PEI's natural beauty are, and like even to the point where I think if you hadn't been to the island, you might think they were overblown. Then you go there and you see it, and you're like, oh no, this actually pretty much nails it.
But more than that, I think what's so amazing about the way that Lucy Maud Montgomery writes is like, yes, it's specifically about PEI, but Anne breaks everything down into these tiny little pieces that you have in your town, or, everyone's got a pond, everyone has trees. Anne's reverence alone for trees has
Hmm.
made me, when I'm walking around Stratford on my break, and I actually remind myself to look up at the sky, at the trees, at the stars. Like it's so cheesy. It's just full, like I'm choking on cheese, but she really does remind you to be grateful for something as mundane as October's. Like, what does October mean? It's like crisp fall, it's the smell of leaves, it's the colors. It's such a great reminder to look around you and just take a breath and appreciate what you see.
And that is definitely what makes Anne, I think, continue to resonate over the course of over a century, is because it's not a saccharine story, right? That some of those other old-fashioned books, I'm thinking of something like Pollyanna, who is well known for having that, but it became more of a joke, right? Like not realistic for a real person to be so consistently optimistic. Anne is not saccharine. Anne is fully real. And that's why, like, her reverence for nature is almost contagious when you read the books, right?
There's
Because it's so authentic.
Yeah, it's so authentic, and there's real hardship in this
Yes.
book. Like that's the thing. Every time I read it, I'm like, okay, we're getting into the back half, and I know what's coming, and it's a lot of hits, and they come fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't have that light without the dark, and that is something that does make it exciting to adapt theatrically and dramatically, because there is quite a lot of conflict. It's just kind of really spread out over the book and the miniseries and the series, and you have to really condense it, smush it into a timeline.
And Anne's reverence for nature is part of what helps her survive all of the hits, right? The ones prior to Green Gables, the ones that happen once she's been there.
And it's like, even when Anne is like, it's also about community, right? It's like looking, not just looking around you at the trees, but like, for someone who comes from having no friends to having a friend that lives in a bookcase or an echo, which breaks my heart
Mhm.
every single time, to having a friend like Diana. Because it just reminds you, all you need is one. You just need one person to accept you and believe in you, and everything can come from that. It's
Yeah. Kat, I would love to know, we talk about Maud's descriptions of nature. We talk about Anne's reverence for nature and the authenticity of her love for the beauty in the world around her. How are you guys capturing that on stage? Like, how is that coming to life in a theatrical production? I mean, don't spoil anything for the people who are going to go see it, but I'm so curious to know.
I don't think, I mean, the thing is, imagination is such a vital part of this story that I think I would be remiss in not asking audience members to use their imaginations. Like when I was a kid and I was asked by a production to, just like, when you saw West Side Story, like you knew they weren't in a street, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, this is a play. But as a kid, when I was asked to imagine something, it made me feel like I was part of the story, like I was really integral to the telling of it. So we do a lot of that. Of course, we have, we have a set, but it's suggestive. And we have access to beautiful lights and beautiful music, but I can't put an ocean on stage in the way that you can shoot it cinematically when you're in PEI and you have these beautiful sweeping filmed shots, but I can create a feeling and I can ask you to imagine, just as people who haven't seen a visual version of this, just as my set designer, who had also never seen the miniseries, like what she imagined from reading those words, that
Mhm.
feeling I can give you. It will never be what either of you have in your head for what the house should look like, or, everyone has their own version of Anne and their own version of the house and their own version of what nature should feel like. But I can give you kind of a marker and then ask you to come with me in imagining the rest. So we have trees, we have a house, but they're more ideas than realistic things. And I actually think that's really in the spirit of how Anne's mind works. Like Anne doesn't need, she just needs a bookcase and she has a friend.
Yeah.
I have a dolly. If I have something with wheels, I have a buggy. You know
Right,
it
right.
should be a buggy. If we all agree that it's a buggy, it's a buggy.
I agree. That's perfectly in keeping. That is the audience taking their cues from Anne as a character, I think.
Yeah, totally. And it's also that the chorus in our production, the chorus is also they're actively talking about what they think this adaptation should be and how they see Anne and their favorite parts of the book. So what we end up seeing is kind of an Anne that they collectively imagine, but that requires us to be.
Hmm.
They literally take a breath and imagine Anne, and there she is.
So you are doing something very, very unique with your production here. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
About the imagination perspective or the slight update?
Some of both. Whatever you want to share about it.
It's kind of a fusion of like ancient Greek drama and vaudevillian comedy in irreverent metafiction and like swoony rom-coms from my childhood. Like She's All That comes up a lot. Um,
Oh, that's so funny.
it doesn't have to just be one thing. We've have that version of it. The musical is really, really great. And with an E is really great. It's
Yeah.
all period. They have tons of money. They have actual PEI. What I have is feelings and nostalgia. And that nostalgia for me isn't just contained to this book, but also to my childhood and what I was, feeling when I was engrossed in this story as well. So all of and like the whole Gilbert storyline is so rom-com. It's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Enemies to friends, like it's amazing. It's just right there. And it just means that we can play a little bit with like, what does green hair look like in 2025? Are there moments that can exist in both worlds? Like I can't stress enough, you will absolutely get the petticoat version of Anne of Green Gables. Like it's there, but it's if we just imagine and go a little bit further, can some of these themes get blown out and can we revisit some of these images in a funny and interesting way that maybe we're ready for?
So you're kind of doing like you as you call it the petticoat version of Anne, sort of the time period that the book is set in, but then also doing an adaptation or a more modern adaptation. Is this at the same time? Is this like split between the two acts? Like how like just kind of functionally how does that work?
Anne is like, who would ever want to read about Anne of Green Gables? Like in
Hmm.
a scene with Miss Stacy, and the chorus kind of to show her that this story has lasting power, and that even as a kid who doesn't have a lot of confidence or is insecure, you have the ability to leave a legacy. And then the second part is it's not quite act and act, but the second part is
Okay.
basically we do this a scene with Miss Stacy where Anne is really in the doldrums about her life and she's imagining so much, and Miss Stacy says, you can just tell your story. Your story matters. Your story of who you are as Anne of Green Gables matters. And Anne says, well, who would want to read that? And we are the people that would want to read that. And from that, we do kind of a literal time jump, and it's 2025, and it's exactly the same story. It's just now it is in 2025. So we do kind of almost a montage, and the period things kind of drip away, and we're left with the same house, but just now we're many years later, and all the themes are the same, and we just get to see what Anne looks like now, what Anne looks and feels like now.
I think that's so iconic. I think that's going to just be the coolest thing ever. I
I hope
honestly.
so.
Well, and I think that's often what people think about when they think about Anne, right? Like they think about it as it's a period piece, that if
Yeah.
you're thinking about Anne these days, it's a period piece. But also, there's a reason why we keep reading this story, and she keeps finding new audiences every generation, which means that there's something about Anne that is not period specific
Right.
that we keep leaning into. It's kind of, I mean, similar to the way that we do that with Pride and Prejudice, right? There's something about that story. Yes, it's a period piece and there's period adaptations, but the core of that story feels so timeless.
Bridget Jones is Pride and Prejudice. Clueless is Emma. Like these are like also from my childhood.
Yeah.
Um, but those things, it's like we don't blink an eye when a director or like the Macbeth at Stratford is biker gangs,
Love it.
and no one is coming in being like, no, Macbeth has to happen on the heath, and they have to be wearing chainmail, and the witches have to be old hags, and no, like that's not. We don't do that with every piece of art, and it's like you say. I think if the spirit is intact, because all of those adaptations, like even the musical, doesn't do all the stuff that the book does.
No.
Like like
And nothing could, right? The book is the book.
the book is the book, and also it's that when we read the book, we imagine it a certain way. So what we're actually doing is holding things up to a standard of our own imagination, which really nothing could. I could never see exactly how Ragon sees Anne. I could never present that, but I can suggest something that maybe hits enough of it that Ragon can imagine the rest and get it closer to her interpretation of that story or who that person looks like. And I think a lot of the, like with the graphic novels, or even at in Charlottetown this year, like they had a non-white Anne, and that's people were upset, but like those things have to change,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's not always nice, the process of them changing. There are themes that I think are inherent in the book that couldn't have been explored in 1908. There wasn't the vocabulary or the context for those things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's something we've talked about a lot on the pod as well, but even some of the relationships between the characters, whether or not there are, romantic interactions between Anne and Diana's friendships, these kinds of things. I mean, 1908 was not the time to tell that story, but that story exists. That story is on the page in Anne of Green Gables, and one of the beauty of modern adaptations is getting to see that played out more. We're
Totally.
getting
And
to see it's space for it at least.
making space for it and letting people who identify with that part of the story feel seen within that story because you voice it. Even like when I'm rereading it now, I'm really noticing the older friendships like Rachel and Marilla, and
Yeah.
like I think about my mom and her friends and how tight that bond is. Like it all really boils down to different kinds of love.
And the family you choose and the
Yeah.
people who you put in your world to be your family. And then we talk about the universality of this, whether it's a graphic novel that's updated Anne as like a foster kid, whatever the sort of modern twist on it that makes it seem more relevant now is, the core theme of this book is always going to be family and relationships.
Of
And
course.
that's absolutely universal.
And that'll never change. Like people kept saying like what makes a good adaptation, and for me it's something that remains true to the spirit of the original IP, the original intellectual property, but takes it somewhere else as well. Like we tell stories again and again and again for a reason. We've returned to this story again and again for a reason because we find new things in it every time we come back to it. What a waste to not express those new things and explore them and develop them so that more people can discover more.
I also think that there's something to be said for, with an adaptation, getting in there and sort of giving it a good hard shake and seeing what holds on and seeing what falls away is actually really a beautiful and important thing to do. I had the privilege of seeing a new adaptation on Broadway of Romeo and Juliet this past spring, and it was, it was so silly and chaotic. And they'd cut out so much of the dialogue that it was like, I kept saying it was like the MTV music video version of the actual story and whatever, but also like, do we need a purist purists' version of Romeo and Juliet? I think not. Everybody knows what that story is. And so by, shaking off some of the stuff that maybe doesn't seem relevant, you still had a breathtakingly romantic, very exciting, violent and bloody and fun and sexy show, which is exactly what it was when Shakespeare wrote it. That was great too.
I agree. And I think like, was that Anne Juliet?
No, it was an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, or an updated one. It wasn't Anne Juliet. It was chaotic. It was so funny.
But I think
Um,
there's something that happens in our minds as viewers because Shakespeare is so old that we're like, okay, yeah, we can change that now.
yeah.
It's like we are every time you do an adaptation of anything, it's changing. Like we are now. I've seen three different versions of Spider-Man.
Oh my God, totally. Yes.
The original was written when like less than 100 years ago, and we're allowed to change that constantly. And it's that I think sometimes we confuse reverence and necessity. I have a deep reverence for this story. I am so honored that I get to touch these words and rearrange them and add my own. Like it really truly when I recently went to Italy, and this is again full cheese, but when I saw the David, I was like, wow, that's Michelangelo. Like that's Michelangelo's soul there. And when I think about Anne, I'm like, that's Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I get to work with her. Like she's my like she's my pal. Like what a cool thing to get to do. And why would I want to do it exactly like she did? I hope when I'm dead that someone's like, I have some cool ideas for this stuff that Kat was working on. Like this joke doesn't make any sense now in 2099. Things get better with collaboration.
Yeah.
Like, and it will never be the best. It will never be the original version of this book that she wrote, which is perfect in and of what it is. But this is something else. Like this is a completely different medium, and there's no songs. There actually are. There actually are a couple songs. It's not a musical, but it does have some music because I like music and because I like musical theater. And because one of the chorus members is like, why isn't this the musical? Which is a great question. The music is so integral to this to how I first received this story. Like when I watched that miniseries, the music was so like emotionally manipulative for how I received those scenes in those moments. So much so that like I can sometimes when I was reading it, I could hear some of that music.
Mm-hmm.
Just totally iconic.
Well, so Kat, I'm wondering when you're in the process of this adaptation work of sort of bridging the gap between Ella Montgomery's original novel and the play that you guys are producing now, how are you putting your unique stamp on it while still, staying true to Maud's original work?
I think it's that like those things, Greek drama, like a sense of vaudeville, it moves very quickly. Like we make everything appear and disappear. And like I'm known for very fast pace, so it moves at a clip. It moves, I would like to say it moves with the velocity of youth. Because I would always rather an audience have to keep up a little bit. Kids are quick. And kids, because they haven't been taught all of the rules, are much happier when you break them than a traditional adult audience. Like truly, I wish your daughter could come bring it. I'm like I really want her to see this. It maybe feels a little wild and chaotic at times, but like that's childhood, and that's also the book.
Yeah.
Like just the sheer number of things that happen to Anne, like that. Like the Haunted Wood is a chapter in which Anne and Diana freak themselves out. Like that's all that's happening. But it's so scary and so magical in the book that we don't have that scene, for instance, but they're like we do all of the like cordial, which becomes just a physical comedy scene. We have, I think, 80% of the really, really important benchmarks, everything that I could squish in, plus a few other things. Like they perform a song in a talent show. Like that's something that's so reminiscent of like movies from my childhood. And I think there's a lot like, in the book, it's a concert, but I don't, it's not as exciting for me to see Anne recite poetry.
Right. And it's not for audiences today, that's not really the way that we I mean, I have been to a fair number of talent shows and they're not generally poetry recitations. I've seen some talk about some wild acts, right? I used to live text Kelly from the school talent show about some of the wild things that were happening. But
I would make Reagan and her husband film parts of it, and then they would show it to me, and we would be laughing uproariously. And Reagan's daughter would be so mystified. She was like, "This is deadly serious. I do not understand why you guys are laughing."
the two girls who performed like a ballet dance in those blow up sumo suits.
Stop it! Stop it! Oh my God.
That sounds amazing. Wow, if she told me about that, I would have put it in the show.
Yeah,
If only.
when you
There's a
say
lot
things
to
like the velocity of youth, like little girls doing ballet and sumo suits, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. It's just that sort of like chaos and creativity, breaking the rules because you don't even know what the rules are yet. Kat, I cannot wait to see this production. It sounds like it's going to be absolutely splendid.
But also, like the story, like the adult tracks are so meaty. Those characters
Mm.
of Rachel and Matthew and Marilla, who are kind of my extended family unit in this, those scenes do lend themselves beautifully to drama. They're incredibly emotional. They're cathartic. And they're highly dramatic. Those scenes are kind of made for theater.
And one of the things we found going back and reading these books as adults that we did not attend to as much as kids, but going back and reading them, we really found like Marilla's emotional transformation, not just over the course of the first book, but over the first several books,
Mhm.
is so beautiful, so meaningful. And getting a chance to go back and read that again and pull those pieces out of Marilla's story and what this is meaning to her, I can see that being such a beautiful thing to portray on the stage.
And the thing too with doing a new adaptation is you get to follow people a little more. Like I can say I always felt that Diana got like the short end of the stick.
She
Just
did.
doesn't get to go to school. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a thing I can change. She can go to school. Maybe Prissy can have a little bit more redemption too in a newer retelling. Just something that you can focus on characters that I think are more devices because of course they are. Like there's so much in that book. You can zoom into the kids, you can zoom into Rachel's life, you can just really think about perspective and POV and what happens if this scene is from someone else's point of view. Like if we think about really Marilla, like Marilla has a in our show too, a pretty transformative arc,
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
just as much as Anne.
Revisiting these books as, women in our 40s brings us a whole new level of understanding of Marilla and her journey. And I think it's such a richer reading experience. And yeah, again, as Reagan says, I would love to see how that gets played out in your show as well. Kat, how did your experience and perspective on Anne and the books change after the process of writing this play?
I think it just became so much richer because I'm sitting
Mm.
in those emotional beats and I'm moving words around. And then once you see a scene up on its feet, acted by these brilliant actors, it really makes you think about it in a different way. Like I said, the female relationships in the play really jump out at me as and in the story, having now read the book so many more times and worked these scenes so many more times. But also just it's shifted my own personal point of view a little bit. At the very beginning of this, I said I was going to try to go into this process and be more like Anne. Again, this is full cheese. I wouldn't think of things as challenges. I would try to think of them as opportunities. And I would try to open the gates of my soul to newer things and ideas and collaborations in different communities and just ways of seeing the world. And I've found that you really can, if you just take a second, try to find the flip of whatever the situation you're having. So, it's terrible that it's raining, but also that smell of rain is really nice. Like just little tiny things like that. And it's not necessarily that it's changed my experience of Anne. Like I've loved this story forever, but I think watching that miniseries, I had no idea what a true epic masterpiece that book is. Like it really just deepened my appreciation and love for Lucy Maud Montgomery as a creator. and for her to put so much of herself and her experiences and her imaginations and the way that I think she may have wished the world to be or people to be. Because she had such a hard life, as you know. So there's so much of Anne in her. And I think I absolutely am guilty of having called this story saccharine, and I'm like, it's really not. It's actually like Anne is kind of an imaginative realist. And that's a really cool thing to take away from a process like this that has been like both, really difficult and really, really beautiful. And now we're going to get to the point in the coming weeks where we start having audiences. And like, what a gift to get to introduce Anne to people who have never met her.
And what an important time for us all to become imaginative realists.
Yeah.
Did you have a particular scene or character that was your favorite to write?
I mean, it was really fun writing the Anne and Diana stuff because it's really, that's when I feel Lucy and I are collaborating the most because it's your text is so good, but that back and forth is very much also how I like to write. So those scenes were really joyful for me to work on, like everything from cordial to anytime Diana and Anne are together, and they're, it's that drama of your best friend. What do you mean I can't even look at her at school, Mrs. Barry, you monster? What do you mean? I just gave her juice. I didn't get, like, it's those
Yep.
things feel so close still to me. Like when I think about my childhood friend, even my girlfriends now, I'm like, that all really tracks. And then the Marilla and Anne back half of the book, which is just so like gut wrenching and beautiful. Like to see these two very different women who have both changed and grown over the course of facing all of this adversity, all the adversity that both Anne and Marilla had, because they're so similar. Like Marilla has a vicious temper as well that we don't talk about as much. But it's, yeah. So I think the Anne and Diana and the Anne and Marilla scenes, and yeah, of course, cordial. The buggy ride, which makes it into every single adaptation in some way, shape, or form. It's just such a banger. Like that's Matthew's first introduction. It's our first introduction to Anne, and you kind of watch. It's so amazing to get to hear it, to have people who haven't seen it or haven't read the book. You can feel them falling in love with Anne, of course, of that like 30 pages of straight talking. And our Anne she's so wonderful. Caroline Toll, who plays Anne, she's just incredible, and you really do just fall in love with her from that first. I was worried you wouldn't come, and I was going to sleep in that cherry tree, which is the first thing we really hear her say. It's just so beautiful. I'm gonna cry.
No, don't cry, because then we'll cry.
Well, no, Kat, this is another question that we had for you, though. You have now been working on this for quite some time, been, wrangling with the original texts, the other adaptations, the scholarly work around this, plus seeing it come to life on stage. When you watch it now, as you guys are in tech rehearsals, what still gives you that sort of like emotional moment?
It's seeing Anne. I haven't seen a run yet. I'm about to see our first run tomorrow, but we have
That's so exciting.
a moment when we see the house, when Anne sees the house.
Mm.
It's that line from the buggy. Do things ever give you a thrill? And there are moments from the text, like from the book, to from the script, to from rehearsal, to seeing it on full stage, that will always give me a thrill. And seeing Anne the first time, seeing the house and feeling Anne's just wonder at that something so perfect could exist. It's so wonderful that she couldn't even imagine it. Those moments will continue to thrill me, I think, till October. But I'll get back to you after our first tech dress. I'll be like, it's all terrible. I hate it all.
Burn it down. Start from the beginning.
And that's part of the creative process too. Let's be real, is sort of that reckoning. We're like, oh, I hate everything we just did here.
Oh yeah.
But, and then you push through it. Yeah.
A part that I think I talked a little bit this with you guys about how I was like obsessed with Josie and the Pussycats, that movie, and like the song that we've written for Anne and Diana to sing at the talent show is so fun, and like seeing Anne and Jane and Diana up there with electric guitars and basses, and lights, and it's so fun to see that version of Anne. to see that version that I had in my head when I was working on this. It's very cool.
That is like when I think about my experience of reading Anne as a kid, any character that you truly connected with, you kind of imagine them as part of your world. And I remember asking my daughter Alice, like, what did she think of Anne when she was done? And she was like, I could imagine Anne as one of my best friends. Like I would have so much fun with her. Kelly took her shopping and they went to Claire's and came out with a wealth of earrings. And she told me, she was like, that would be so much fun to do with Anne. Like she would love Claire's. She would have loved going to Claire's and seeing all of the jewelry and all of the hair bows and everything. Like if she was real, that's what I would do with her.
Totally. And such a fun thing. What is Rachel like in our, like 2025, Rachel has a giant Stanley water bottle.
Oh yeah.
Like such a busybody. She's going to Pilates. She's going to get her hair done. Like it's so fun. It's kind of like casting archetype people that we know as these people now. Like
Oh,
Marilla,
well, Kat,
like
I have to tell you, Reagan and I were talking not too long ago about how I recently moved to a new neighborhood, and I feel like I have become the Rachel Lind of this neighborhood. And I've been referring to the season of my life as the Rachel Lindification of my life. So this is just something that happens to you, I think, as you approach middle age. You either become a Marilla or a Rachel. I have become a Rachel.
Kelly's like, tell me all the gossip,
I
folks.
need to know all the gossip. I'm bribing the children to come over with cookies. I need to know everything that's going on.
that's the other thing that's so interesting because like traditionally it's a very like Marilla and Matthew are much older. Our Matthew is not 70. Sorry, he's 60 in the book.
They are not people who we would know in 2025 and think, oh, those are old people. We would think that
Totally.
they're, normal adults.
And that's the cool thing about seeing what these people looked like in 1908 when you're 55 and you're basically dead, and 2025 when you're J-Lo.
Yes, 100%. Yep.
That's like just it's not meant to be a history lesson. It certainly isn't, but like to see the old timey Avonlea wood fire stove and then see it with a modern stove, it is kind of like a little museum moment of
Yeah,
like
that's
what's the
cool.
difference, and the only difference is like electronics. Like Marilla gives Anne a laptop in 2025 to go to school with, and
Instead of a slate.
yeah, and it's so magical because imagine if you told Anne about the internet.
Oh my gosh.
Like imagine what Anne could do with the internet and the right to vote. Like
Fan art. Anne is making fan art and fan fiction. I can
Oh,
tell you
for
right now.
sure she is. Yes, fan fiction all over the place.
but like that sometimes I think we forget. Like I look at my phone and I'm like, this is magic.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay my taxes on this phone. That the taxes aren't magical, but like
But the fact that it's this
Yeah.
enormous computer in the palm of your hand.
totally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have read Anne of Green Gables on this phone.
Yep.
Like, and I've listened to multiple audiobook versions on this phone. Like there's elements of now that are just as beautiful and magical and like weirdly nostalgic as they were then. And I think sometimes it's useful to remember that. Like, how would Anne look at what we have now? She wouldn't dismiss it the way I'm just like, oh, I wish my phone was faster. What's wrong with me?
It has to go to space.
Yeah, it's going to space very quickly.
Oh, that's great. I love that perspective. I really do. Kat, I hate to do this, but I think we have to wind this up a little bit. Tell the kindred spirits, how can they see this amazing play?
It runs at the Stratford Festival. It opens on May 31st and runs through to October 25th, but we will be in previews from April 25th onwards, and you can get tickets at www.stratfordfestival.ca.
And we will put that link in our show notes for anybody. We hope you all go and see it. We definitely plan on going to see it. And then I'm not familiar with a festival like this. Once it closes, will it play other places? Will it go elsewhere?
Never know. You never know. It really depends on the reaction. And I think this is the longest for sure run of a play that I have ever had. So we're just trying to get her open.
Don't ask me to think that far in the future.
Which will be tech dress run.
Right. One rehearsal at a time, right?
Before we sign off, I know I've thanked you a bunch, but I really do have to just deeply thank you both again for being kind of one of my biggest ways into this story, but more importantly to the story of people who love Anne of Green Gables, who this adaptation is also for. The way that you both love this story so much was truly so inspiring in the early days of writing it. So thank you.
Oh, that is the nicest thing that anybody's ever said to us.
It really is. Thank you, Kat. We really feel seen.
We really do. We really do. Well, and I think one of the beautiful things about doing this podcast has been with getting a chance to share with each other this love for this book and continuing to deepen that, and how many people we get to meet and share this with and hear their perspectives on and find the way we've all found connection through this particular character. It's a wonderful thing.
Just talk about all of our favorite parts of Anne of Green Gables, but we don't do that on this podcast.
No, but we should definitely keep doing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kat, so much for being here. And thank you to all the kindred spirits for joining us today. Please definitely go check out the Anne of Green Gables play at the Stratford Festival now through October 25th. We hope that you loved hearing from Kat today and will join us for our next episode when we get back to our deep dives by recapping The Golden Road, the follow-up to The Story Girl. So tune in for that. Thank you, kindred spirits.